Approaching 22 past the hour with one of our top breaking stories today, that being the officials scrambling to assess the damage after a 7.1 magnitude earthquake hit Southern California last night. It struck near Ridgecrest. That is where the 6.4 magnitude quake also shook nearby. On the morning of 4th of July, just a day earlier, residents remaining on edge as the USGS is reporting the earth under Southern California keeps rumbling with about one aftershock every minute, to varying degrees, of course. Joining me now, California Representative Linda Sánchez, a member of the Ways and Means Committee and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. And ma'am, I'm glad to have you here with me. Where were you? Did you feel that quake?
I was having dinner with family friends, and yeah, we felt a very gentle rolling. I was in Los Angeles, so it was not as sharp as it was in other areas. Yeah.
How about your constituents? Any concerns from them? Because they would be a good distance away, a good 100 miles or so away from Ridgecrest.
Yes, but I live in Whittier, and Whittier has a fault line as well. We've had an earthquake in the past, so it does set people on edge a bit.
I can about imagine. Well, fortunately, no reports of damage, injuries, or the like for you and your constituents. Okay, all good. Yeah. Let's get to the president's tax returns.
Yes.
Because I'm well aware that your committee is suing the Trump administration in federal court. It's been, what, 6 years of tax returns that you're trying to get with no effect at getting anywhere close to getting them. Steve Mnuchin saying there's irrelevancy here. What is the point of this? There's no need. We have to prove that there's a need to get these taxes for what gain? Talk about what your lawsuit says.
Sure. So because of past scandals in administrations where there was bribery and use of federal lands for oil companies and timber companies, there is a section of the United States Code, 6103, which says that upon the request of the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, which is the tax committee in Congress, the IRS shall turn over the tax returns of the president. So our chairman, Richard Neal of Massachusetts, has been following the letter of the law. He requested 6 years of Trump's business and personal tax returns. Returns, I might add, that the president during the election said he'd be happy to turn over, and still hasn't. So he made the request to the IRS. The IRS deferred to the Department of Treasury. Treasury says, we're not going to give them to you. So that was in April. In May, we issued subpoenas for those documents. They pretty much just ignored the subpoenas. So the final step in trying to enforce that was that on July 2nd, we filed a lawsuit trying to enforce them turning over those documents. And the statute is very clear. It says upon the request, they shall turn them over.
You're emphasizing the word shall, and I remember back in April there was all this discussion about the interpretation of the word shall. Did we just waste so much time going over that? The arguments were ridiculous.
If you ask any judge, shall is pretty clear. It means you do it. You get asked, you have to do it. And yet this administration, the president himself, thinks that he's above the law, thinks that he doesn't have to answer to the courts or the judges, and seems to want to just completely erase the separation of powers and the checks and balances that are set up in our democracy to make sure that somebody is not enriching themselves by their office or not not being nefarious in their dealings. And that's all we're trying to find out is, what does the president has he benefited from many of the tax policies that they've put into place? Where does he get, funding from? Is he, hiding assets? Those are all very relevant questions, because if you have a president that is enriching himself because of the office, that's not good for America, not good for democracy.
There's the emoluments clause for one thing. But we'll get to that on another discussion. I want to get to the prospect of the president adding, as he wants to, at least he's contemplating adding the citizenship question to the 2020 census. The likelihood of that happening, just from a logistics standpoint, we missed the deadline of June 30th for them to add anything. This now has to go to print, but he wants to use potentially an executive order to add that. What is the detriment of doing that? With you in the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, you're very much opposed to it.
Correct. Again, another instance in which the president doesn't seem to want to respect the power of the judiciary, the separation of powers. The Supreme Court ruled that the reason that they gave for wanting to include the question was false. They basically lied. It's not for apportionment, because the Constitution is very clear that says persons shall be counted, not citizens. There is an ulterior motive, which is to try to decrease the participation by certain communities, in particular immigrant communities, through fear. And if they don't stand up and be counted, then they get less representation, communities don't get their fair share of resources. And the president doesn't seem to want to listen to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said your reasoning was false. He seemed, the folks at the Department of Justice seem to concede and say, okay, we're going to go to print with the census questionnaire without that question. And the president tweets and reverses. Even the lawyers were caught off guard. They didn't know what rationale the president was trying to use. So by him saying, well, I'm just going to do it by executive order, again, doesn't respect the judiciary and the fact that you can't just do what you want because you're the president and not have to answer for your actions. There are mechanisms and there is a structure that you have to follow. You don't get to make up the rules as you go, and he seems to want to do that. So he seems to be pushing that envelope and heading towards, creating a crisis where a crisis isn't necessary. I don't think that they can come up with a justification that is a true justification for including that question.
California Representative Linda Sánchez, lots to talk about, and thank you for staying on the case on both of those issues. Thank you so much.